before anything, Johnny Depp, how are you? Could you explain why have you gotten behind the cameras, and especially about a film about Amedeo Modigliani? What interested you about this character?
Well, what interested me initially about the idea of making the film was, you know, a very strange phone call from Al Pacino saying, "Hey, you remember that Modigliani thing I was gonna do years ago? I think you should direct it." I'm like, what? What do you mean? So the fact that for some reason Al saw me somehow driving this strange machine. I mean, when Pacino speaks, you must listen. And so I ran with it, but really had no great idea what it was going to be ultimately until the pieces of the puzzle came together. That is to say, when you know who your Modi is, when you know who your Beatrice is, and Soutine, and Utrillo, and Rosalie. I mean, when you know who these characters are, for me, it made it a real sort of different experience than I had when I directed a film many years ago, The Brave. First, I didn't have to be in it, which is much more fun. But I got to sort of, more than anything, do what I think is correct with regard to filmmaking. Allow the actors to explore, and by allowing the actors to explore, you then learn things, and so then the actors are telling the scene what it wants to be, and then after that, the scene starts telling the sequence what it wants to be, and then ultimately the film is telling you what it wants to be. So it was a very different experience being just behind the camera as opposed to having to fight some sort of, you know, directing and acting at the same time, which is horrific. Or it was for me. What happens now?
Hola, Johnny.
Hi, Johnny. Good afternoon. Over here. It's right in front of you. She's got her hand up. She's going to stand up. There she is. Hi, Johnny. How are you? I'd like to ask you, we're talking about an artist of last century, but I think the film is quite current in a lot of the reflections it makes. Johnny Depp, rich and famous Johnny Depp that we know now, has gone through tough periods, I imagine, just like the ones reflected by the artist Modigliani in the film, who's hardly got enough food to eat in some of the most cases. Can you tell us the whys and whereabouts of you and how you started, that is to say, in your career?
Thank you. That's, yeah, no, you see a lot in the film. Thank you. My beginning was an accident. That is not to say that my parents made an accident. That's just, I mean, maybe they did. I never really had the conversation. However, my beginning in movies, acting, whatever, was by accident, and it was a moment where, yeah, there's an expression, it's called when the rubber meets the road. You know, when the tires are on the road and you take off and you split, you drive. There's something beautiful to me about those days living in a tiny studio apartment just off Hollywood Boulevard in a dangerous neighborhood. Those days are It's like reading Movable Feast by Hemingway. You know, they're romantic days. They were tough, they were rough, they were ugly, they were weird. It was all kinds of stuff, but they were beautiful. So, yeah, I mean, to capture someone who's in the midst of earning their stripes in life, as it were, you know, and to be a witness, to bear witness to 3 days in this particular artists and these people's lives. And each has their story, because sure, we can say that I've been through a number of things here and there, but you know, I'm all right. And I think we've all been through a number of things. Ultimately, maybe yours didn't turn into a soap opera. I mean, televised, in fact, and all that. But we all experience and go through what we go through, and those things that we are able to live and remember and use. These are your stripes. You never forget them. So to see these people all on the teetering on the verge of earning their stripes and desperate to speak but unable to, in a way, you know. But it only works for me. It only worked for me because this cast was able to deliver something that you can, I mean, one shouldn't have expectations at all on it in any sense, but man, to be able to watch these actors out there feeling free enough to try anything and take the story further was, for me, I realized my job was not a director at all. I was merely there to capture, you know. I was just there to snap that instant, you know. What happens next? Sorry.
Sí, tenemos, hay algo